Nicki Minaj, and there's something in the sound which is really awful. It's like you can't listen to that music. It goes into the brain in a certain way, like no other music, even not hip-hop or this other periods. Have you anything to say about that?
Well, that music makes me feel physically ill. I can't listen to it. I'm serious. I can't. If it comes on the radio, I have to turn it off. If I'm in a bar or a club, I have to walk out, because the music of the likes of Nicki Minaj, Lil Wayne, Drake, 2 Chainz, Big Sean, most of Rihanna's stuff, Beyoncé's stuff, Kanye West, I can't listen to that stuff. And I'm convinced that there's something. I mean, Kanye West has been utterly degraded, systematically degraded as an artist, and I go into this in the book. He started out as a conscious, positive kind of persona, and he was making great music, but as the years went by, you can actually chart the deterioration of his lyrics and his persona, and it's very clearly in line with an agenda. But what they're doing with this music is they are altering the production methods, the sound frequencies. They're using sound frequencies that don't sit well with the human energy field and with human brain waves. And they create a discordant, dissonant effect, which is why a lot of people can't listen to that stuff. It grates, it sounds horrible. It certainly does to me. And that is going hand in hand with the lyrics. And when you get into the lyrics of the likes of Nicki Minaj, again, remembering that the fan base will be largely young girls, it's just disgusting. One of her lyrics is, "Kiss my arse and my anus because it's finally famous." And she's talking about, I mean, that's not even the worst one, but it's absolute toxic filth and garbage masquerading as this cool, fashionable thing. And they're getting the current young generation of music fans into this stuff, and they're normalising it. They're getting them used to the idea that this is hip-hop, this is where it's at, kids, this is music that speaks to your generation. And, if you're old enough to remember what went before, you can see how disgusting and toxic the whole thing is. The other thing that they're doing is they're drenching every goddamn thing these days with auto-tune, which is this horrific method of vocal production. It's a software plugin where they make the vocalist sound like a bloody robot. They go all electronic and digital, and this has become the norm. The majority of so-called R&B and hip-hop records is even getting into reggae records now, and pop music. All the tune is drenched in auto-tune, and it makes the vocalist sound like a bloody robot, and it's not by accident, because this is all part of the transhumanism agenda, where they want to merge humanity with technology. And there's so much to say about that, but auto-tune is definitely a part of the agenda. So there's all these toxic components going into the music, and it's no accident that, or it's no surprise, that it makes people feel so unwell, because it's meant to do that.
I just wanted to know your take on the whole Michael Jackson death. If there was some mysterious things to that.
Well, I think they were. Very little is as it seems in this world, and very little is as it seems in the entertainment industry. I've got a section in the book where I'm looking into the many strange discrepancies and anomalies that arise in the case of certain high-profile music artist deaths. And it goes right back to Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones in 1969, and then you've got Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin in 1970, Jim Morrison in 1971, and then going forward, Bob Marley 1981, slightly before that John Lennon in 1980, then Michael Jackson 2009, and Whitney Houston 2012. And in each case there are many unanswered questions, many things that don't add up. With Michael Jackson, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that he was mind controlled from a very early age, trauma-based mind control, which is something that is endemic throughout the entertainment industry, and many A-list artists will have undergone this. There's actually a lot of symbolism to suggest that Michael Jackson was part of that program. We saw him doing the sixth sign as a young boy, and he was obviously greatly manipulated and controlled by his overbearing father from an early age. And so I think mind control was present throughout his career. There is evidence that he was kind of breaking through that, and that the programming to a certain extent was starting to wear off, because he did make a few interesting public statements. He made a statement about Tommy Mottola, the CEO of Columbia Records, saying that he was devilish and he was Satan. And he described Columbia as an evil corporation. And then he brought out tracks like History, where he was talking about how the official version of history has been manipulated and changed to give us a version that they want us to believe. So I think he was becoming a bit of a liability. He was becoming a bit unpredictable because his humanity was starting to break through the mind control programming. That's my take on it. I think he was stitched up with those two child abuse cases, the allegations. I think they are a classic sign of what they try and do to discredit people that are starting to get a bit close to the truth, or that they don't want the public paying attention to. So it's my view that he was absolutely stitched up, and it's my view that they decided to take him out when they did. Some people think that with the series of concerts that he was due to do in Wembley just before he died, he was going to use those as some kind of public platform to say who knows what, and reveal who knows what. And they couldn't take that chance, so the decision was taken to take him out at that time in ritualistic fashion. It seems to be whenever they decide to take one of their artists out, it's always steeped in occult symbolism. They decide to make a ritual of it. So Conrad Murray, the Doctor, would have been absolutely the fall guy for it. Yet another patsy, the lone nutter in this case. They like to just pin it on one individual so that there's no suggestion of a conspiracy. So I don't know what happened to him beyond that, but I don't think it was, as we were told, that Conrad Murray just screwed up.
I would like to know what your take is on the metal music, with many of the satanic and occult stuff you mentioned earlier being completely mainstream in metal music and not subliminal at all, used as covers and t-shirts and so on. What's your take on that?
I've not studied metal music very much, to be honest. I've spent so much time delving into hip-hop and pop music generally that metal's never really been my thing, and I've not looked into it in any great depth. I've kind of skimmed the surface of it enough to understand that there are some very dark occult and satanic elements to it. Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne are an obvious example of that. There was a lot of backmasking, reverse subliminal messages that went into the recordings of the likes of Black Sabbath. We saw it with Led Zeppelin as well. One story that does spring to mind, though, is that the phenomenon of backmasking, backwards subliminal messages in recordings, came into the public domain in 1990, related to the group Judas Priest. And there was a court case related to these two young guys. I think one was 18 and one was 20. And they went out and killed themselves. They shot themselves. And the prosecution alleged that it was listening to a Judas Priest record, a particular track from an album of 5 years earlier, which contained the lyric, "Do it, do it." Quite a simple lyric, but this was spliced into the recording backwards. And the claim was that they had interpreted this lyric, "Do it, do it," as "go out and kill yourselves." And they'd been smoking weed and drinking alcohol that night, and then they went out with 2 shotguns and, shot themselves in the head. And the case, in the end, was thrown out, and it was shown to have no merit. But it did put the idea of backmasking and subliminal messages into the public domain. And people started talking about it, and for many it was the first time they'd heard of the idea that there could be messages hidden in recordings. So I think there's a lot more of that goes on in heavy metal music and heavy rock, but it's something I need to study in more depth. Any more?
Yeah. Thanks. What about the AC/DC, the old singer? He used to sing about jailbreak and all that kind of stuff, like funny stuff, and then the new singer is all about guns and what about it's totally different. I mean, that's totally. It's very clear how how it's converted into a violent thing. That it's not supposed to be music. It's not supposed to be funny anymore. It's supposed to be violent or perverted or something like that.
Again, I'm not too familiar with the output of AC/DC. You know, I just know what I see on the surface of it, really. But yeah, I'm sure that ties into the same agenda. I can't really listen to heavy metal music. It makes me feel bad in the same way that appalling hip-hop does. I know heavy metal fans would want to lynch me for saying that, but it's just the way I feel about it. There are a lot of connections between heavy metal and heavy rock and Aleister Crowley, however, which keep popping up. I mean, this guy is like a rock star in his own right. The dark occultist Aleister Crowley that was involved with many occult secret societies, and his lifestyle was pretty much all about sex and drugs and rock and roll. He was involved in ritual sex magic to bring about energetic shifts and changes, and that involved all manner of debauchery and hedonism and all the sort of stuff you hear about at elite ritual parties. It makes Eyes Wide Shut look like a Girl Guide's picnic. And you know, he was into mind-altering drugs and all of that. And for that reason, he seems to have become something of a folk hero in music. And not just heavy rock music, but pretty much every genre. The Beatles were heavily influenced by Crowley, as were the Rolling Stones. You have Elton John saying that he was a student of Crowley. Also David Bowie, Led Zeppelin. Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin bought Aleister Crowley's home, Boleskine House, on the shores of Loch Ness, where all sorts of supernatural things are said to have occurred. And Jay-Z has worn a Do What Thou Wilt sweatshirt, which is one of Crowley's phrases from Thelema. So yeah, the influence of Aleister Crowley is everywhere, and it seems to be quite prevalent in that genre. I'm sorry I can't speak any more about AC/DC because I just don't know enough about it, but it's probably the same type of agenda as we see with all this toxic hip-hop, where there are sound frequencies and lyrics and production methods all working hand in hand to produce a discordant effect in the listener. I used to think this was bullshit. I used to think this couldn't possibly be the case. I was in heavy denial, but I've done the research and I now understand a bit about how reality works, and I understand that this can absolutely be achieved, and I'm sure it's going into that heavy metal genre as much as any other. Should we do a couple more, yeah? Yours and then one other, yeah?
I've got one here.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I've just got two quick questions.
Okay.
The first one is, if you had another child, you would not get it registered? That's the first question. I'm just thinking if something like a car accident happens, or you need, you know, some kind of trauma-based incident. I don't know. I can imagine a lot of stuff. But the second thing is, when you talked about this genre and the things that are not appealing, and you said, you know, all these artists, you don't like the music. I'm one of the girls who like it. I'm one of the young kids, you know. I'm appealed to this kind of music. I'm the one who turned the music up. I like it. Where do we go from here? Is it just like organic stuff? We just stop listening to things that are bad or mainstream? Where do we go from here? How do I convert this into my everyday life?
Okay, well that's a good question. I'll address the birth certificate one first. I do now know better, but until there is a system in place which large numbers of people are a part of, I don't have any kind of feasible alternative at my disposal. If I had another child, I have no plans to, but if I did, I would probably have to conform to letting that child be registered in the same way that the others were, because there is no alternative system in place yet to provide a reasonable other way of doing things. And as you say, if you don't register in that way, you miss out on schooling and healthcare, so-called, you know, not always great things to have, but you are unplugged from the rest of society, and there are, you know, problems that can be experienced. There are clearly an alternative way of doing things needs to be set in place, and the current system has to go. But I'm just one individual, and I don't have the solution as to how that can be achieved. That has to be done by way of large numbers of people coming together, pooling their consciousness and working together to devise an alternative system. You know, I can't really say anything beyond that. In terms of the music that you listen to that is obviously aimed at your generation, I completely understand your stance on it. The reason I understand it is because when I came up as a DJ in the early years, the sort of music that I listened to was the sort of stuff that was being put out by Jay-Z and others of that era. And I used to think that Jay-Z was an amazing artist, a truly gifted lyricist. He still is. That's why he's been chosen as their #1 asset. That's why he's the one that's up there at the very top of the tree, simply because he's got that talent and they've realised how he can be put to work for them. So it was very difficult for me to come to terms with the fact that he was manipulated, the fact that he was a stooge, and the fact that his music was being used for mind control purposes. And since I've been doing work into the Beatles and this whole Paul McCartney thing, I've met a number of original generation Beatles fans who remember that group from the 60s. And they have a lot of nostalgic memories invested in the Beatles as they remember them. And so when you try and suggest to an original Beatles fan that the hidden hand was at place with that group, and that all may not be as it seems, and that they were a product of the Tavistock Institute and all the rest of it, you get a lot of resistance and a lot of denial, because people, that's their generation, that's the soundtrack of their youth, it's special to them, and they do not want to think of it as being corrupted in any way. So I do get it, because the whole Jay-Z thing was a problem for me, which I've had to overcome. But the evidence is there, and the truth is the truth. And I've had to come to terms with the way hip-hop music is being used. The evidence is there in terms of the music that you listen to. I'm putting it out there, there's a number of other researchers putting it out there in terms of what the music is being used for. It's your choice, of course, entirely what you do with that information. That's the gift of free will. But there is alternative music available if you choose to discard that stuff and look for some of the others. As I've said, you don't hear it on the radio, you don't hear it in clubs, because they don't want you listening to it. But it is out there, and it can be found. So there are alternative choices to be made if you choose to, but it is each individual's free will choice as to whether they continue to listen to that stuff or not. You know, it works for some, doesn't work for others. That's pretty much it.
We have about 5 minutes left, and there are loads of you who want to ask questions. Fantastic. So I'm just going to leave this guy...
We'll do one more, yeah?
Yeah, this guy's been waiting for since the beginning.
Hey. Yeah.
Hi.
So lately, the last couple of months, there's been a lot of videos online about predictive programming. So, talking about this month, number 23, and you know, all this talk about a possible nuclear attack.
Yeah, the world's going to blow up in, what is it, 4 days?
Yeah, no, but also that it's might be the birth of the New World Order with some kind of event because of the 7-year thing with the Smita and all that stuff. Like 9/11 was on the Smita and all that. Then also the CERN machine, there's a lot of shit going on about the CERN turning on full power at the 23rd. And of course the hope goes to Obama, and they got some stuff going on there. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I've heard all about it. I've heard the theories that something big is about to go down on the 23rd of this month, which is this coming Wednesday, I think. CERN is going into overdrive, as you say. There have been rumours of an asteroid or meteor that's going to strike the Earth. We've seen all this stuff before, to be honest. You know, we get these scare stories every now and again. We had it with the Millennium Bug in the dawn of 2000, and then something big was going to go down on 2012, 21st of December 2012. I think it serves a purpose every now and again for there to be a bit of fear-mongering going on amongst the alternative community, if you like, to have people in anticipation of something catastrophic that may be about to happen. I think it's all part of keeping people in a low vibrational fear-based state, and in most cases these dates come and go without incident. I hope that will be the case with the 23rd, and I think it will. And I think it's more of what I mentioned about predictive programming elements are sometimes used to reinforce a cover story or something completely bogus, something which didn't even happen. It was just a hoax using actors. It doesn't matter that it wasn't genuine, it wasn't real. The idea is to gain that familiarity with it in the public subconscious and to get people fearful of it. And I think that might be what's going on here. There's been a lot of talk about what may or may not happen on the 23rd. There's a lot of fear and anxiety and stress as a result of it, and that serves a purpose. I think and I hope that Wednesday is going to come and go without incident. But I guess we don't have to wait long, do we? We'll soon know.
Thank you. Great. We have one last question, I'm afraid. This is the